I'm going to talk today about annual broadleaved weed control in 2024. All your problems solved in 15 minutes. So here we go. A survey was carried out in Germany quite recently about methods of weed control, and I think we're very similar in the methods that we employ here in the UK. Predominantly, it's overall broadcast spraying. A little bit of mechanical weed control, that's when we're generally looking at controlling weed beet, probably in the conventional varieties, or sometimes if we've had some capping to loosen up the soil. Band spraying and inter-row mechanical weed control, very little at the moment, but I think long term that is definitely going to increase because herbicide actives are disappearing, they're not being renewed, as political and public pressure is increasing. I'm also going to talk a little bit about resistance issues. We're now starting to be aware of those in the sugar beet. And of course, environmental factors need considering. But herbicides do account for over 70% of pesticide products that are applied to the sugar beet as a foliar spray. So it is, quite important area to look at. This is a busy slide, but it's important to look at. It's the renewal status of actives in Europe and in GB. And although we're separate now here after Brexit, it's good to keep an eye on what's happening over in Europe. And I've highlighted there triflusulfuron methyl, debut, Shiro. That's the last year of use in Europe for that active or any products including that active. It's still to be considered under GB, so we're still awaiting the decision there. And then we've got the two actives in blue, that's Conviso 1 chemistry. And so that leaves very few for us to use in the conventional beet crop. So pesticide usage survey, that was a report carried out by FERA that's available online, published in November last year, so anybody can look at it. And I don't think there's any surprises there that the key actives or the most common herbicide actives that are used are metametron, you'll know it perhaps as Goldtix, Betix, fenmedifam, betasana SC, ethylfumosate effect, and then clopyrrolid make an appearance. I'll do a little bit more on that on the next few slides. And then, as you'll see, triflusulfuron methyl does feature quite strongly. So BBRO trials for 2004 will continue work looking at weed control options without that active, just in case, the worst case scenario. So we will be looking at that on fenland soils and sandland soils. So clopyrrolid, I mentioned that increasing in use of that active, and some reasons may be related to the loss of desmedifam, that people are now looking to include this active in the programme to boost up control of some of the weeds that desmedifam helped with. It's mainly, I guess, used for volunteer potato control and thistles as well. But what I want to say today, the key message here is that do follow the voluntary initiative guidelines for this active. It's very difficult to remove from water. It's very costly, very difficult, and if we want to keep this active, please do follow the guidelines and wherever possible use an alternative product active if you can. So that leads nicely on to volunteer potatoes and Bracebridge Heath, so a trial site not far from here, which some of you hopefully visited last year. We weren't initially going to be looking at volunteer potatoes, but they were popping up all over the trial everywhere, so a few visitors kindly suggested that Simon and myself should go along and do a closer look at these. So that's fine. We was looking at the foliage effect because we had different actives being applied, some newer chemistry since the previous work that was carried out many years ago when clopyrrolid was introduced. And what we found was ethylfumosate and clopyrrolid were doing the most actual damage to the potato foliage, and also the Conviso 1 chemistry as well. But then it got a bit worse because we had to go back and dig up all these volunteer potatoes. So that was quite hard work on August the 8th. And one thing what we did notice immediately was the difference in size of the tubers. So you can see there the formosulfuron, cyanocarbazone, methyl ones, very small. The majority of those were all under 45 millimetres. Another thing to mention is that emergence of potatoes, as you'll know, any of the potato growers, is very staggered. So you have to take into account what you're applying and when you're applying. And obviously, the Conviso 1 chemistry, there's only one chance of hitting those volunteer potatoes, so some may miss out. But we've anyhow taken these tubers. They're all chitting at the moment, and Also, it was interesting to see the distortion effect on the ALS chemistry to those tubers. But we're now at the next stage where February the 16th, we've got it in the diary, we'll be potting up all these tubers from the different treatments and then seeing what the viability is, because that's really important. But the message today from this trial, or my personal thought at the moment, is that we should still include clopyrrolide in the programme, because we know it has an impact on these daughter tubers. But that work will be written up in a Beet Review magazine article in due course. On to ALS resistance. I think a lot of you in here will be dealing with cereals as well, and will know that ALS resistance is an issue in the cereal crop, where they talk about mode of action with the ALS inhibitors group 2 chemistry, Atlantis, you know that, and that we've got the most resistance to that chemistry globally and within in Europe. You can see the number of weed species impacted as over 160 shown resistance. So what does that mean for sugar beet? Well, we've never really had an issue or not talked about resistance on broad-leaved weeds in the beet crop. And I think it's because we're very good at tank mixing. We'll put together lots of different actives and they come from different mode of action groups. But we do have 3 actives there that come from that group 2. The triflusulfuron methyl again. But as I say, nobody would ever use that on its own. It's always in tank mix. But we have moved to using the Conviso 1 where we're not allowed to tank mix here in the UK. It's not permitted. So what are the implications? Well, last year I was going out helping with the National Crop Survey, and I deviated and started looking at weeds, and also some of my colleagues within British Sugar as well. There was a few fields, and I'll stress just a few, where we were concerned about the level of weed control. So those poppies, they look lovely, but not so lovely to the grower, and also some quite cheeky looking chickweed there. So what happened was Lisa De Vere, she's a colleague of mine in British Sugar, she's doing her basis, and she's doing this as a basis project with the help of ADAS Boxworth, collected the seed from a number of fields, and I must just say my manager's in this room, and he actually collected some of the seed from one of the fields, so before he gets that on to me. So he went out and collected some seed as well, and we then had some untreated plots, and then some were treated with the Conviso chemistry at 1 litre per hectare. And you can see there that untreated chickweed and treated chickweed, we're not getting what we'd expect as complete death where we've put the Conviso on. Now this is graphed up, and as you can see, just 5 fields there. So along the bottom, we've got the coded ones, which are fields. We took some susceptible poppy, which we knew that poppy would be controlled by the Conviso, and you can see 100% mean reduction, so it's dead. And then if you go along to 23 CBLW07, non-resistant along the top, that was not that was controlled completely by the Conviso, so it was not resistant. So putting that Conviso on those seeds, completely killed. So that is a lesson that not every instance where you're seeing poor weed control in the field is not always resistance. So just be aware of that. But on those other fields, you can see various level in reduction of biomass, so we have got an issue there. So what is the advice from that? Well, KWS and Beta Seeds, they provide very good information on resistance management, and put a chart up here. If you've got ALS resistant weeds expected and weed beet, well, you can use a smart variety, but you also need to incorporate some conventional chemistry in there as well at that pre-emergence or early post-emergence stage. Remember, you cannot tank mix at the moment. And then if you've got weed beet and BCN, well, a conventional variety, but you need to use a BCN tolerant one, because the smart varieties currently do not have the BCN tolerance, but they're on their way. And then if you've got just BCN, then conventional variety to use that. Right, so now on to Bracebridge Heath. This is 2022, and I'm sure some of you visited this site that year and saw all those fat hen there. They were just as high as me, well, not hundreds, there was 54.3 plants per metre squared, and 44 of those were fat hen. This always comes up about fat hen control, so just a few reminders here. And it's really simple for me standing here on the stage, but include metametron early in the programme, pre-M, early post-M. Make sure you get sufficient in and continue with that. and then use a combination of ethofumazate and fenmedifam as well. And you can see at the end where I've got 0, where you've got a combination of all those 3 actives together, we controlled all those fat hen at that site. Emergent weed problems, where are they coming from? It's a rotational issue, not just sugar beet. Again, when I was supposed to be looking at beet establishment, I decided to look at groundsel establishment, and we've got 37,000 plants per hectare. So we do see a change in weed populations as we change our management of other crops and also what chemistry we're using in other crops. So be aware of that, identify them correctly, and then target the control of these weeds appropriately. What are we doing? Well, at Yaxley in Suffolk in 2024, we've got a large-scale demonstration planned. We've got the whole field where we've got a smart variety, 12-metre wide plots. They're going to be 2 reps, and we'll be looking at conventional and ALS chemistry, overall and band spraying and tractor hoeing. And the aim is to see if we can reduce the amount of herbicides used. And has it become economical to use mechanical weeding? Some plots will just be mechanical weeding. Is that feasible or not? And then, hopefully, going forward into 2025-26, we'll develop this trial further and perhaps look into the spot spray and target spraying. The Sustainable Farming Initiative has just announced that there are annual payments for looking at precision farming options in weed control, so beware of those. And again, Autonomous Agri Solutions, Century Farming, in conjunction with Robotic, BBRO and British Sugar, looking at robotic means of weed control. So in summary, do make sure you have correct identification of weeds. Look at hygiene and prevention. If you're using game cover, make sure you don't get a species sort of creeping into the field. Use herbicides that are most effective and at the appropriate rate. Well, I won't read all these, but just do as much as you can and keep an eye on the work that we're doing. And I think precision application farming will start to go forward within our beet grow and crop. So thank you very much, everybody. That's a whistle-stop tour. Thank you.